Hi, my name is Cheryl Moody, and I have decided to open up about my survival tale. Putting pen to paper was scary and therapeutic, but it also showed me how powerful words could be when it came to healing. This is the secret story of my killer stepfather, Barry Gordon Hadlow. May 22nd, 1990 was the very day every parent in the town of Roma will remember for the rest of their lives. It was a horrible act in their close-knit community. I was 19 at the time. I'll never forget it because it seemed like such a normal day. On that afternoon, my stepfather arrived to pick me up from the local bus station. It would have never occurred to me that my stepfather would pick me up on the road as I headed to school just hours after he raped and killed a 9-year-old girl. But as he drove me back to the family home, I recall his angry, frantic behavior. My stepfather kept talking about a little girl, Stacy Ann Tracy, who had gone missing and how he would assist the town in looking for her. That's exactly what I recall. He woke up very early the next day, dressed in his sus volunteer outfit, and headed off to join the hunt for her. 3 days later, when I opened the family door to see who it was, I discovered investigators carrying a warrant and roughly 30 uniformed cops standing in my yard. I was numb. They informed me that my stepfather was being charged with the rape and murder of Stacy Ann Tracy and the murder of Sandra. I stood still. I ran to my mom and shot out many questions, but all that she told me was my stepfather was a good person, and she did not know that he was arrested a few years back. Besides these, I knew she was hiding something. I suspected that I got a chance to learn about the killer side of my stepfather, which my mother didn't like. My stepfather's name was Barry Gordon Hadlow. He was born in Brisbane on July 2nd, 1942. He was the eighth of 8 children, although he never married and had no children. He was convicted and sentenced to life in jail with hard labor in 1963 when he was 20 years old for the murder of a 5-year-old child in Townsville. In 1985, he was granted parole. I found these in newspaper articles. Is that why my mother was hiding from me? He killed a little child once again when he came back. I never liked him. He was rude and heartless. He entered my life when I was 15. I had spent years of violent abuse by my mother up until then, and my stepfather was an added problem to my plate. I didn't let these break me down. Instead, they have shaped me.
I was around 15 when my mother married a man called Barry Hadlow, and she met Barry Hadlow in Toowoomba in Queensland. We didn't know it then, but he had just been paroled from jail.
I could still remember the hours before picking me up. My stepfather was with Stacy Ann Tracy, the 9-year-old girl. During his brutal assault, he pushed the little one's underpants down her mouth to suppress her screams. He strangled the remaining life from her body with a blind cord. When she didn't choke to death on the material, he flung her aside with all the homicidal accessories in place. In a hasty attempt to disguise his heinous acts, a window blind cable twisted around her neck, biting into her delicate pale skin. A splash of vividly colored substance grotesquely leaking from the corner of her mouth. A bruise the size of his fist staining one of her cheeks. Surprisingly, he attempted to protect her modesty by slipping her legs and waist into an old black rubbish bag. Her undies were gone, and her netball skirt was twisted beneath the rumpled plastic. A shredded slip of paper clung fiercely to one of her toes, covered with scrawled names and numbers, an unknowing calling card left behind by her assassin. According to the autopsy, she had been raped before and after she died. I went blank hearing these. I felt the pain when I saw the little Stacy Ann Tracy's body resting in a white casket, encircled by soft pink velvet. Her baby sister and her family met in the chapel of Roma's funeral home 1 week after Stacy vanished to say their final goodbyes to the girl. Morticians tried their utmost to conceal any injuries that had been left behind. The bruises on her face and the rope marks around her neck were hidden by makeup. She was wearing a striped pink and white dress with flowers sprinkled throughout it. Her small hand was adorned with a delicate gold bracelet, and her neck was adorned with a golden chain with a heart-shaped locket. Her baby sister stood on the stool because she couldn't look inside the casket and wanted to kiss Stacy. She told her sister, "I'll see you soon." The scene still haunts me. Stacy Ann's sister Elizabeth Tracy and her mother, Janet Mills Clark, told them they never thought that May 22nd was the last day she kissed her daughter alive. Libby and Stacy had never experienced violence since their family made sure they were safe from the negative aspects of the world. Because of their naivety, Libby couldn't fathom the worst possible possibilities for her sister. Abduction, murder, and rape were foreign notions to her, yet she was filled with dread, fear, and uncertainty. I remember that Stacy's funeral drew one of the largest crowds Roma has ever seen. Graziers and grain farmers, farmhands, shop clerks, teachers, physicians, uniformed police, detectives, industry leaders, legislators, SAS volunteers, grandparents, grandfathers, children, and teens. No one in Roma was unaffected by Stacy's death on that day. Stacy's casket was brought to the hearse and drove the short distance to the local cemetery after a poignant service with traditional songs and prayers and warm recollections shared about her brief life. Stacy is one of the 4,268 people that are buried there. A clean pink and white tiled slab covers her grave. Flowers are occasionally placed in the vases beside her bronze memorial plaque by citizens. Libby's life was difficult after she lost Stacy. Her family took every attempt to keep the brutal circumstances of Stacy's death hidden, but the other children in Roma were not as considerate. The revelations forced me to stand up for what was right. I decided to stand as a witness for Stacy's case, but the case of Sandra, I was not aware. So I started to gather insights about that case. I discovered that he had been convicted of child rape when he was 16 years old, and that he was on parole for the rape and murder of 5-year-old Sandra Dorothy Bacon in Townsville when he raped and murdered Stacy. My stepfather lured Sandra into his home in November 1962, telling her he had some books she needed to pass on to her sister. Then he tried to choke Sandra to death when she shouted for help. Sandra was a little child who battled for survival. Finally, he murdered her by stabbing her in the heart with a huge hunting knife, later admitting she wasn't dying quickly enough. The mother's husband wrapped the lower half of Sandra's corpse in an old maize bag and placed her into the car trunk after murdering her. He served 23 years in prison for murder and married my mother not long after his release in 1985. Having strong evidence and witnesses, my stepfather was charged with the murder, forcefully holding a kid under the age of 14 and treating a minor under the age of 12 indecently and unlawfully. My mother's husband pled not guilty to Stacey Ann's murder, but the jury found him guilty anyway. On March 1991, he was condemned to life in jail, recommending that he never be freed. That suggestion was followed through. Mr. Hadlow had been incarcerated in Woolston Correctional Center since 1996, except for a brief spell in 1999. He was given a life sentence, and his life was sealed. He was never to be released. At the age of 65, he died in 2007. After all this, my mother went to court to defend her husband and remained with him long after his conviction. I haven't seen her since I was 20 years old. At 12, I recall disconnecting from my mother. I have, however, maintained contact with Stacey's family, who have been nothing but kind to me and showed me love throughout the years. After seeing a glorification of violence in my stepfather's case, I went on to become a journalist, determined to help alter the way the media reported on crime. I've been recording every known Australian woman and kid who died due to murder, manslaughter, or neglect from the colonial era to the present for the past 5 years. Stacey Ann and other women and children who have died due to abuse inspired me to start the Red Heart campaign. The Red Heart campaign began in September 2015 with a single objective: to provide a forum for survivors of domestic and family abuse to express their trauma, hope, and inspiration. Each contributor would compose a tale and send me a photo of themselves with a red heart painted on their skin to accompany their words. The stories from the Hearts of Courage series poured in. I met many women who wanted to take things a step further. They chose to let me photograph them and share their tales under Why I Stayed banner because they were tired of lurking in the shadows. I've shared roughly 200 stories through the Hearts of Courage project and about 45 stories and survivor pictures through Why I Stayed since launching the Red Heart campaign. While each survivor story is unique, they're all linked by tremendous personal loss, incredible courage, steely determination, and extreme bravery in the face of the most heinous atrocities a human can commit.
I'm really proud to have started the Red Heart campaign because it's a project that not only arose out of something so tragic and horrifying and sad and devastating. It's a project that's fully supported by her family, and for me, that's the most important thing.
I was roughly 19 years old at the time. My stepfather's horrific deeds greatly influenced my life, even though I didn't know Stacey Ann, but I can tell you that its sheer gravity serves as a stark reminder of the toll on domestic and sexual family violence is taking on our society. Stop being a victim anymore. Rise as a survivor. What do you guys think about the story of killer stepfather? A narration by his very own stepdaughter. Let us know in the comments section. Don't forget to like our video if you enjoyed it. If you are a newbie to our channel, make sure to subscribe.